All right, we're back here in the JConcepts garage with another vlog episode. We're here with Paul, Wynn, AJ, Marasco. We're going to talk about a couple different events, but first of all, you guys made a trip out down South Florida to the Roar On-Road Nationals, and we'll talk with Paul a little bit first. Paul, you've run a bunch of these races in the past, but I know you mentioned this is your first one in quite a long time, and how'd it go?
It went pretty well considering it's my first Nationals in probably, 10 years or so. Competition was pretty high. Turnout was a little low, but the quality of people there was really strong. You had Randy Castor from California, you had Kevin Hebert from Canada, we had Ryan Cavallari, of course, Rick Howard, so a few guys from Texas, Chris Adams, and local guys like myself, Dave Vera. So we had a strong group of guys there.
So, you ran in the modified class, which is traditionally what you've always run. You have won a Roar National title before in touring car. Kind of going back a little bit, what year was that, and what class was it back then?
It was when I was with Schumacher, and it was 2004. We were running, back then it was brush motor, so we had modified 19 turn, 12 scale. They actually ran 12 scale outdoor still. So I needed a second class, as well as a few of the other pro drivers. They would just drop into the 19 turn class since they didn't have a 12 scale. So myself, Todd Hodge, Andrew Cartwright, guys like that, we ran 19 turns. So I ended up qualifying second behind my teammate Andrew Cartwright, and then I won the main and the AAA mains, and that was in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. So yeah, it's been a little while, but you have had a lot of success over the years. This year you ran the team associated car. Maybe tell us a little bit about which car you ran. And I know you went through some configurations. You tried a bunch of stuff. You were there in the pits with Cavallari and Rick and the guys. And how did things go from that standpoint? And what type of things did you learn with the cars?
Yeah, I was running the associated TC 7.1. It's was pretty stock form. I brought two cars. I had one that was aluminum chassis. I was thinking with the high bite and European style track. We were actually racing on a nitro track, so I thought the stiffer chassis might be the way to go. And then I also had a carbon car. So I damaged my aluminum chassis early on in practice, so I switched over to the carbon car, which actually worked out well because it actually gave the car a little more traction early on, which I needed. And pitting with those guys was pretty amazing. I mean, I was, kind of behind the eight ball a little bit when it comes to setup and being able to bounce off the ideas off of those guys. It helped a lot. So, Cavallari doesn't do a lot of his own wrenching at these races, but he knows exactly what the car should be doing. And between him, Randy, and Rick, they really got things dialed in, and then I just piggybacked off them. So.
And then kind of bouncing over to AJ. AJ, you ran in the stock class, with the same type of car. And, were you learning some things from Paul and kind of working your way into your class with that as well?
Yeah, I just kind of took his ideas off a setup and kind of tried a few things here and there, and kind of what worked for me. Some of the stuff didn't work, and kind of more trial and error on practice day. And I kind of got the car pretty dialed in and slightly off of what Paul was running, and something that was more comfortable for what I liked in my driving style.
So this was your first on-road national. You've run a little bit. You had some pretty good success. You got fourth overall, and had some pretty good battles. But what are some things that you learned at a race like this versus some of the off-road races you've run? I mean, you've run stock nationals and different events in off-road, but how about the on-road and touring car?
It's very different. The scene's very different. The people are different. Racing with others, the racing style, and choosing your lines and different lines really, and kind of really you have to really know your setup, and your body's got to be pretty accurate. It's just totally different.
So you brought, normally you have a lot of Trinity support. You had your guys there. What type of things did you guys work on in the power department running in stock? I mean, I know I was at a stock race. That's all I hear the whole time is power. And I'm sure in on-road it's got to be everything. What were some things that you guys went over and worked on with the Trinity?
We really worked on more of timing-wise, and getting it to not fade at all for the 6-minute run, and trying to have most power from the beginning to the end. Worked on a little bit of batteries, not as much, as the motor stuff, but and a little bit of gearing. But I kind of found the gearing I liked that had plenty of bottom and not and plenty of top, just to have best of both there.
So Paul, we kind of shocked a few people. We released a touring car body last year, the A1 we're calling it. Is our one and only body we have at the moment. Both you and AJ, we're committed to this setup the whole weekend, and you did try some things, and you've run a little bit. Explain to us kind of what you've done here with the body that we have, and and you guys are really competitive, and explain how things worked and maybe kind of where we're going down the road here.
Yeah, this track being a nitro track, so it's over 220 feet long and 150 feet deep. It's a really big track from what we're used to. And we went down there and did some testing a few weeks before the race. And traction was, I would say, medium to low. And we ran our standard lightweight body, and that seemed to work really well. It gave the car a little more traction, and we ran the body just slightly forward to keep the balance. And once we got down there for the race itself, for the Roar Nationals, the bike came up, a lot more cars on the track. It seemed like the traction was about the same the first day, but then after that it really came up. So I found myself needing a little more steering, so I actually mounted a new body, mounted a little further forward, and brought the wing back just a little bit to keep that stability. And it worked really well. It seems like we're going to need maybe a secondary body for these bigger, faster tracks. So this one, I would say medium size, average track to small track, it works really well. But on the big track, we could use a little more downforce. So, I think we'll have to work on the body a little bit, give it a little more downforce, and that way we have a choice of bodies depending on the track that we're at.
This race was a little bit unique in the terms of we had one of our best guys there, Ryan Cavallari, who, we've asked to help us with some of this stuff, try some of these bodies, tell us, how things are working, and then you working with him a little bit, driving yourself, you and AJ, we're coming up with some things. And tell us about some of the things that maybe Ryan was talking about that maybe we can incorporate down the road that people will see for sure.
Yeah, one of the things that he felt he needed was, like I said, the downforce. He felt like the car was a little more on top of the track instead of in the track, whereas you could watch some of the other guys, their car, was really, locked down, being this high-speed track. So we definitely talked about what we could do. We could actually, I think, make the body a little smaller. The newer style bodies, which when we designed this body, we looked at everything that was out there, and everything was still somewhat realistic. They tried to keep everything looking like a touring car, a four-door car, headlights and grills, and so that's what we went for. And then timing wasn't very good, but a month later everyone released what I call these cheater bodies. They're just wedge looking bodies, and they kind of look like oval bodies. And it seems like that's kind of the next evolution that we'll have to go towards. So we'll have to have all this channeling down the center, and have the car where you can mount the body really low, but they have this really peaky roof so they can still be Roar legal. So we'll look at that as well. And I think this body is actually really close. It's just a few tweaks here and there, and I think we'll have another great body for the high speed tracks.
Yeah, I think that's one of the purposes of you going down, running the warm up, running the race. You and AJ, is to get out there, run a little bit. You already have a ton of experience, but just getting out there with the guys and experiencing some things firsthand, right?
Sure, yeah. And that's, that was another thing with AJ running stock versus mod. Stock weight is a huge issue. Of course, there's a minimum weight, but you want to keep that weight as low as possible. And so, AJ kind of did the same thing. He lowered his body as far as he could, but kept the roof legal. Didn't run as much wing as I did, because in stock you don't need that extra traction. So the body actually worked really well for him in stock, but there are a few key things that I think just the body being a little smaller will be a lot better for stock racing.
And I know something that I was doing during the same weekend, we had two races kind of overlapping. I was over at the JConcepts Stock Nationals at OCRC. I believe you went there the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And AJ, you've run the race before,
Yeah.
and so it's a big race at OCRC. And I know you guys are busy, but did you check in at all what was going on at the stock race and kind of see what was happening?
Yeah, we definitely were following along, especially, you guys were doing live coverage, so that made it really nice. And so, yeah, we were in the pits. We had the JConcepts coverage, and we're cheering on our phone. And, Randy Castor posted a picture. We're cheering on Matthew Gonzalez. And
Yep.
so he's one of our local favorites up there. And, yeah, I mean, AJ was peeking in once in a while with us, and it was cool to see. Especially this year, it looked like it was probably the most pro drivers they've ever had at that event.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they'll have one, maybe two, and this year I think they had like 3 or 4 pro guys there.
So from your perspective, AJ, I mean, you've run the stock Nats before going into the off-road side. What makes that race special, different, more difficult than some of the others? I mean, you've run quite a few stock races, but that race there at OCRC, it's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. It is. You have a lot more people running stock now, so it's not just 30 to 40 entries in stock. It's going to be more of good 60 to 70 entries for say expert stock. So then you have a lot more better drivers, and you can't really make any mistakes. You got to be on top of your game the whole time, top of the tires, your car, your motor, your battery, everything really.
So when you ran the class, obviously the motors and batteries super critical. Did you see anything that stood out to you watching maybe the videos or some of the photos of stuff that guys were doing that maybe you had experienced when you've been there?
Yeah, they're all putting the MIP puck systems in their cars, lighting the drivetrains up.
Lots of fans.
Lots of fans. This year I saw lots of fans.
Yeah. So what is the story with all the fans? Obviously you run a lot of stock. That's all I ever hear is how a fan fits in the car. Where do I put it? Can I add another one? I mean, you hear so much about fans, but tell us about what that's all about.
I really don't know. I just put kind of one fan on my car and just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
It kind of is what it is with me. I just kind of just drive, and then if something gets hot, maybe I'll have Kevin have it just kind of turn on my motor a little bit, turn the timing down, or maybe change my gearing up for how the temp is.
Something I didn't realize when I was there is something that you guys talk about. You guys hashtag it the no fade, but I didn't really pay too much attention to that in the past. But watching the good guys, we'll call them the good guys, because you got Spencer, Dustin Evans, Dakota. I mean, these guys are monsters on all the tracks. But watching them, and you watch the lap times, and there was a drop off. They would start off fast. They could say, "Hey, I could do these jumps at the beginning." And then they fade, and there isn't as much confidence at the end of the run as there is at the beginning. And like you said, that's a big thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's kind of also dependent on how your driving style is in the beginning. If you're too aggressive, then you're going to start heating your stuff up real quick, and that's what also makes it a tough main doing 10 minutes in stock.
Yeah, I saw Ron Schur. And he was really active helping Jake Thayer, who won last year when Paul was there in one of the classes. And and when he was there in the pits tuning, he was telling me the whole time, we're setting up for 10 minutes. We're going to set our cars up for 10 minutes because we know we'll have to run the main for 10 minutes. I'm not so sure Dustin and Spencer were doing that because they were so interested in TQing. Their thought process was, I'm just going to get through 5 and then I'll just see what happens for 10. And I never heard those guys talk about so much about speed and power, and asking people what they should do, and people with the experience like you, they're asking, hey, how do I get this to go faster?
Yeah.
And it was really kind of interesting to watch from that perspective, and seeing Dakota run stock. I mean, he won a lot of championships in that class when he was a kid, but now being much older and being an established mod guy going back to stock, it was cool to see him run. And then Dustin, I think he looked very prepared, but also a little frustrated at the same time because he didn't have that cushion like he normally does in modified. And I think Paul experienced that when you were there running. I think you ran 40 plus the year before. And what is that kind of like when you go from mod to stock and you kind of hit that wall?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, and with myself as well as some of the other mod guys, is they're so they're so used to mod that the stock driving of the car is actually really easy to them. So they're pushing the car so hard. And it goes back to what AJ said, is it's easy to overdo it right away because it's so easy for those guys that you start overheating the motor, or you're just gearing and doing things just for single lap performance, like clearing a jump or doing this, whereas AJ has a little more experience. He knows he's got to run the 6 minute or the 10 minute. So those guys are, it's frustrating because it's so easy to them, but then the equipment's what's holding them back.
Yeah.
And that changes a lot of things. And that's one of the things I was fighting when I was there, is it was actually, you got to actually have a car that's free. You can't have a car that's too hooked up. So traction is a major issue, especially at that track, at that race, the time of year. The bite is really high there. So you need a car that's, free in the corners and not too much rear traction, and will have a lot of corner speed, and that helps with your overheating issues. And so I think those are the things that Spencer and Dustin and Dakota probably had to start concentrating on later, when they realized, hey, this is it's easy to drive, but it's hard to go really fast.
Yeah, and I mean, and to talk about the winners and the losers, I mean, Spencer actually TQ'd the stadium truck class, which I think kind of going in, we were thinking out of the three, that was going to be probably his weaker class because he hadn't run the T6.1 that much on dirt.
Right.
But he came in, and did you watch any videos of him driving the T6 in stock?
Yeah, it was, again, I think did they run 13.5 in that class?
It was 17.5.
It was stock? Okay, so, yeah, I mean, that had to be, just crazy for them to drive because it's so much traction, so much tire, and I'm sure the motors were screaming for help.
Yeah, I mean, they mentioned that for sure at the end of the truck runs that they were definitely looking for some extra cooling.
Yeah, him and Dustin were, battling, and it came down to just mistakes really between the two because they're so evenly matched that it was just, traffic or a little bobble here or there made all the difference. Yeah,
and then in the two-wheel main, it was 1A main. Dakota started on pole and probably had one of the best 10-minute, runs front to back that I've seen from him in a long time, and Spencer had one crash coming on the back straightaway, I believe, and that just put him a little bit out of touch. He was right there with the same speed, but just didn't quite put together as clean of a run.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the two or the 4-wheel drive event or the 2-wheel drive event because of our mains going on, but it seemed like they had a pretty good battle throughout the whole weekend. They were kind of trading back and forth, and so Spencer, I think, did he win? He won 4-wheel, second in 2-wheel, and second in truck as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then in the 4-wheel class, which was the one that he looked, I wouldn't say the weakest in during qualifying, but he was making a little more mistakes. That's the one he gets the victory in the main. Things kind of went his way at the end. Dustin had a little bit of a lead, but then traction rolled at the end of the straightaway, and Spencer got by him and ended up winning.
Wow.
So it was a really interesting race, and I know Spencer was really excited to win that 4-wheel race. I mean, of course, Dustin is upset. You lose it on the last lap, but that happens in racing. I mean, you're bound to lose a few at the end, and you're bound to win a couple at the end, but you just kind of hope that you're somewhere there to be close. And I mean, with Spencer's car, I mean, we were fully outfitted with. We seemed like we run dirt webs most of the time on that track. He kind of went with the setup he ran there at the Surf City when we were there last year, and he really liked the way that worked on his car. And the tires lasted a long time, compared to usually running mod.
Right.
Then when the stock classes, I mean, he pretty much had 2 tires that he rotated through the whole time. Ran the F2 body and the Aero wing, and he did some personal anodizing here. He went with some purple stuff, and and as AJ mentioned, I was running the MIP pucks, which he actually went to them all the way around, and he commented that did help his car a little bit. And I think under normal conditions and circumstances, he wouldn't have went that extra mile. But given the fact that they had the competition from Dakota and Dustin, they all felt like they needed to do everything possible to get the win.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I saw, battling with the guys there is, they were trying to one up each other, and whoever had the most access to the most lightweight parts and anything they could do, they went for it.
Right.
And because they were going for the win. But at the end of the day, we'll look this thing over. We'll get some close-ups, but it's a nice B64, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's decked out with all the goodies, titanium, all the hop-up parts, and that car comes with quite a few hop-up parts already. A lot of the aluminum parts are already on there. But yeah, he definitely made it his own, and won the race.
So yeah, we really appreciate you guys stopping in. It was a great opportunity. We can catch up, talk about the JConcepts Stock race at OCRC, do some on-road at the Roar Nationals, and thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time here in the JConcepts garage.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.